I moved into St. Louis in 1964, and one of my first stops was to the St. Louis Transportation Museum. And there I got a brochure that the Burlington Railroad was running steam out of St. Louis. So I had to do this. So this is the summer of 1964. We are leaving from a freight yard in St. Louis, and they are backing the engine and the whole train into the freight yard for boarding. This is Burlington 4960. At the time, the Burlington Railroad was running two steam locomotives. One was a 484 Northern, which now resides in the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden, Colorado. And this 4960 was a freight engine, a Mikado, and it was they were still running it. The train had about 8 cars, and the last car was an open gondola. And I rode on the open gondola for all the way. This trip is from St. Louis to Centralia, Illinois. Here we are climbing the approach to the MacArthur Bridge, which is a bridge that goes over the Mississippi River. This is all handheld, so it's a little bit shaky, especially when we're from a moving train. And of course, this is the technology of 8mm movies of the 1960s. There's the mighty Mississippi River. And this is in western Illinois. The Burlington shared trackage with the Pennsylvania Railroad for a certain distance east from St. Louis, and then it broke off to a Cb&Q line that went down to Centralia. So because we were sharing trackage here with the Pennsylvania, they couldn't stop for photo runs. But there were photo runs once we got on the Cb&Q line. This is just after leaving the Pennsylvania. We're now on the Cb&Q line. This is a photo run by on the Cb&Q line north of Centralia, Illinois. Though they're taking the engine off, they will turn the engine but will not turn the train. So the open gondola car for the trip back will be right behind the engine. Here we are on the gondola right behind the engine. I rode in this gondola car all the way to St. Louis. That's a photo of a Jordan spreader. I rode in the open gondola all the way to St. Louis, and it took me a week to get the cinders out of my hair. I believe this engine is hand-fired. I don't think it's got a stoker. There's a diesel from the Pennsylvania. We're crossing the Mississippi again, going back to St. Louis. We're backing into the freight yard here. This trip ran on both Saturday and Sunday. I rode on Saturday and I chased on Sunday. So the next pictures you will see are the Sunday trip that I chased on. This is Sunday morning. This is the return trip from Centralia on Sunday. The commuter cars were from commuter service in Chicago. They ran the commuter service on Friday afternoon and brought the cars down to St. Louis for the trips and then sent them back up for Monday morning in Chicago. This is the MacArthur Bridge going across the Mississippi. You can see a little bit of the Mississippi River there on the left. But the train is coming off the MacArthur Bridge. And there we are backing into the freight yard where the trip will end. This is what I believe is the last trip out of St. Louis. This is February of 1966. The Burlington had already announced that they would suspend the steam operations at the end of the 1966 season. The engine is coming here into St. Louis Union Depot. The last trip was out of St. Louis Union Depot. There's a Y there at St. Louis Union Depot. The St. Louis station is a stub end station. There is no 3 tracks, and so the trains had to go through a Y and getting turned around. But here the engine is backing up to pick up its train.
Stop it. Stand by.
One of the dangers of photographing steam is that sometimes the smoke blocks the view of the engine. So here we lose the view of the engine. This trip was from St. Louis to Hannibal, Missouri. Hannibal is a town in Missouri that is about 100 miles up the Mississippi River. You can tell this is Granger country. If you look closely at the Mississippi River, you can see there are ice chunks in the Mississippi. Again, this was February of 1966. There he's handing up orders. And the conductor gets his copy. And we have to have coal. Again, ice chunks on the Mississippi River. This is Chicago. I'm not sure what year this is. The C&S on the tender, on the water tender, is Colorado and Southern. It was a subsidiary of the Burlington Railroad at the time. This is Mendota, Illinois. That engine is a sister engine of 4960. It's also a Mikado. Obviously no longer in service and sitting there kind of rusting at the time. This was taken at the Roundhouse in Mendota, Illinois. I'm not sure what train that is, but they're pulling those E7s off the train. Again, I don't know what train that is. You can tell that we're in farming country by the loads on those flat cars. This train coming into the station is the California Zephyr. We are obviously running at 55 miles an hour here. This engine had been used several times to pull a circus train from Baraboo, Wisconsin to Milwaukee, and because of that, when the Burlington ended their steam excursions, they donated this engine to the Circus World Museum in Baraboo, Wisconsin. It was there for about 16 years as a static display, and then it was sold to a railroad in Denham, Virginia, which is in extreme western Virginia. At the time, I was living in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, so I went up to see it, and I told the people there that I had these movies, and they said, well, if I would bring the movies up and show it to them, they would give me a cab ride. So I went back up with the movies, I got my cab ride, and I showed these movies in the dining car in Western Virginia with the engine sitting under steam on the next track. The engine then was in Denham, Virginia for a few years, and then it was sold to the Grand Canyon Railway in Arizona, and it is still operable today. The Grand Canyon Railroad did some modifications on it. They replaced the tender and built a completely new tender. They converted the engine to oil, and they added some cooling pipes onto the engine. But it basically looks pretty much like it did when it was an excursion service, and the engine is still operable on the Grand Canyon Railway today. This is one of my favorite shots. I'm not sure of the location. This, I believe, is the last trip out of Chicago. At times, the engine was running at about 70 miles an hour. I could not keep up with it. I just had to wait and meet it when it was stopped. I am not sure what train this is. This is car carriers in St. Louis at the time they were open, and that is the end of the show.